check this out, will you? Yeah, pull the wire out.
The Bible says the right hand of God sat the angel. On the left hand of God sat the devil.
We were always suspicious of these people. Who are you and why are you throwing from the left side?
Right-handed quarterbacks are average. Lefties stand out. They're ahead of the class. They're above. They shouldn't have to pay taxes.
How many left-handed quarterbacks are there?
You want to go there, huh? Okay.
Sheer math, only 7 to 10% of all human beings are lefty. I did my research.
The percentage of the world population of lefties is somewhere in the vicinity of 30%.
There just hasn't been a lot of guys in the NFL who are left-handed quarterbacks, I guess. Has there even been 30?
Actually, yes. The number is around 32 and growing. That's about 4% of all quarterbacks in NFL history.
32, that's it?
That's amazing. I've seen a lot of bad ones.
Well, in this show you'll see many good, some bad, and a few downright ugly lefty quarterbacks.
Marinovich in trouble. Sack. Fumbles the ball.
So exactly why have there been so few?
Great question, man. One of those mysteries of the universe. The world is made for right-handers.
There's something about a left-handed quarterback.
They're a couple of French fries shy of a full meal deal.
I don't know what you mean by that.
They ought to outlaw southpaws.
What kind of call is that?
It adds a wrinkle of complexity that people just aren't used to.
Teams' lines have to be built differently. The blind side is now suddenly the right tackle, not the left tackle.
Normally, with a right-hander, the ball will spin toward your right side as you're catching the football. With the left-hander, it spins the other way, and it takes some getting used to.
Those of you at home will have to make a quick adjustment, as over the next hour you're going to see a lot of balls spinning from the left, and a bunch of names you'll think we pulled out of left field.
Jimmy, come in from the other room. You might be number one.
The number 10 lefty quarterback of all time, Scott Mitchell.
Can we just have a top 9? I mean, for one episode, please just do a top 9. Scott Mitchell doesn't belong on any top 10 list.
Yeah, Scott Mitchell. Boy, he fits in Detroit, doesn't he?
Let's win this game. We have no letdowns. We can't have any letdowns the rest of this year.
It's interesting Scott Mitchell's in the top 10 for left-handed quarterbacks, mainly, I guess, because there just aren't that many.
When he was asked to come in and start, he didn't do a bad job.
I mean, Scott Mitchell, nice fella, but he should have been a career backup in the National Football League. He's a top 10 quarterback. Whoa, we're in trouble. We're in big, big trouble.
There could be something critically wrong with Dan Marino.
In Week 6 of the 1993 season, our number 10 lefty quarterback, Scott Mitchell, got his big break.
Well, in any event, Scott Mitchell is in the game.
Scott Mitchell had a few really nice games for the Miami Dolphins in relief of Dan Marino.
There's Mitchell. He's in trouble. Breaks out of it. Runs to the near side. Fires. Caught.
He had time to study and learn, and he was a big, sturdy guy.
Mitchell looks into the middle. He throws the end zone. Man open. Touchdown.
Scott Mitchell was born at the right time. He gets to experience the brave new world of NFL free agency.
Mitchell back to throw. Looking right. Throwing deep. Down there is Ingram. He's got it in 20.
Talk about the classic case of a backup quarterback gets an opportunity to play a handful of games and parlayed it into a starting job and a big contract.
And he was pursued heavily. There were teams bidding against the Lions. It wasn't just the Lions making a boneheaded play and throwing a lot of money at Mitchell.
Many people don't realize Mitchell is one of only 3 quarterbacks in history to lead the Lions to multiple playoff appearances.
I think you're being a little unfair to Scott Mitchell there. I mean, there were some other left-handed quarterbacks you probably got ahead of him. He was better than that. Just on the strength of the one season he had with Detroit, he probably should be a little higher on the list than that.
What a great throw by Scott Mitchell.
1995, he has 4,000 yards passing, 32 touchdowns. Lions have all kinds of gaudy numbers for their receivers.
Mitchell back, pumps once, goes for Herman Moore, up Moore, got it!
The Lions won their last 7 games, and they made the playoffs. Once the Lions reached the playoffs, Mitchell threw 4 interceptions.
He lets it go. It's intercepted.
It was about as bad a playoff game as you'll ever see, and his career was all downhill from there.
And the Lions don't know what hit them.
He was a really good guy who couldn't put a franchise on his back. By the way, how many people can?
Even if it's just the 1 year, on the strength of that 1 year, he should be higher than 10.
Mitchell, the more and a bang, got it!
I think Mitchell and the left-handed quarterback that wasn't that in that play, I think should be in the top 5.
Let's give Scott Mitchell a little slack. He was roly-poly. He was a system of the run and shoot. But he made the playoffs twice with the Lions. He had some productive years. He had to be better than the field.
Nope, not on this list.
The number 9 lefty quarterback of all time, the field.
I think that's unfair to Scott. I don't think the field's better than Scott. Let me say that.
Why are we doing that?
Yeah, I think it's a little harsh. I think you're trying to make a case there.
What do you mean, guys? You don't remember Eric Wilhelm or Jeff Carlson?
Now directed traffic. He tries to throw the ball and it's knocked away.
I'll take those guys just because they had good stories. You know, they're just more interesting. Mitchell isn't compelling.
And we can't forget lefties Steve Matthews and Dennis Morrison, even though they only played 3 games each.
Well, I'm looking at this list of these other left-handed QBs. I see a lot of college superstars. And on an NFL show, when you're called a college superstar, that's the ultimate backhanded compliment.
The field is comprised of 27 left-handed quarterbacks. 3 of them came from the ultimate college superstar factory.
Matt Leinart, Paul McDonald, and Todd Marinovich. And all 3 of those guys played at Southern Cal.
Paul McDonald spent 4 years trying to replace Brian Sipe with the Browns. Gets his chance. 23 interceptions, 55 sacks.
Todd Marinovich, he never ate a hamburger, right? Well, you know, I think he made up and he rebelled against all of that RoboCop type upbringing by doing all the partying he did once he got into the NFL, but that's clearly not a way to keep your job.
Marinovich in trouble. Sack. Fumbles the ball.
Leinart, the king of Hollywood. Unfortunately, he's not the king of Arizona. He's getting his chance now. He lost his chance out to an old man a couple years ago, Kurt Warner.
Leinart had a lot of hype out of college, like some of the other lefties on our list.
Chris Sims threw one of the prettiest balls I've ever seen, gave one of the toughest performances I've ever seen when he played with what we found out later was a ruptured spleen.
He'll run for the touchdown.
But there was just something about him where he couldn't get those other 10 guys in the huddle to really rally around him.
Cade McNown also had trouble rallying the troops.
From the day he came in, that kid, he really thought it was all about him. So he was kind of disliked as a teammate, and he was another number 1 draft pick who was a bust in Chicago.
Terry Baker, he was drafted in the 1st round by the Rams. They couldn't quite figure out what to do with him.
Terry Baker is the next target for Munson.
And in 3 years, he was out of the league. He was a really good college player. Obviously, he won the Heisman Trophy.
Baker may have won the Heisman Trophy, but he never won the Lombardi Trophy.
Got it? Andre, hey, hold up.
Jared Lorenzen, Jim Del Gazzo, and David Hum are all lefty quarterbacks that can call themselves Super Bowl champions.
Jared Lorenzen, best known for his nicknames, the Hefty Lefty, Pillsbury Throwboy. Jim Del Gazzo, he was interesting. He was known for his mutton chops. He had big mutton chop sideburns. He was a 3rd-string quarterback for the Dolphins.
David Hum, 4 teams, 95 games played, 1 start. This was a guy who knew how to hold for a field goal.
We can't leave out the lefty quarterbacks who won championships in other football leagues.
Tony Graziani was a backup in Atlanta, never did too much, but the reason you think of him at all today is he had a really nice career in the Arena Football League.
Tony Graziani won a championship in the Arena Football League, while lefty Matt Lytle won a championship with the Amsterdam Admirals in NFL Europe. 3 other lefties found success in the NFL after their playing days were over.
Brock Heward was the Eli Manning of the Heward brothers.
Brock came out of the University of Washington, was one of the top QBs in Washington's history. Didn't get very far in his career.
Brock Heward is now a broadcaster.
Allie Sherman was the first left-handed quarterback in the early 40s.
Way to go.
Sherman only lasted one season, but went on to become a successful coach.
Hey, Rosie, our left tackle, I don't think has been hitting that man. I'm scared to hell.
Fred Wyant was in the 50s. He played a snap or two for the Redskins, but the reason we remember him today is he became an official for many years in the NFL.
Notice which hand he signals with?
I think you're talking about a lot of guys that did nothing in the league.
Hey, man, to me, every name you said is the 9th best left-handed quarterback of all time. I don't know how you could parse it out. I don't know how you could choose between these guys.
Coming up, what pair of lefties ran for their lives in the dark ages of the 1970s NFL?
They thought back then that all lefties were spawn of the devil, and they would either ride them out of town on a rail and tar and feather them, or in some cases actually kill the lefty.
If you've ever wondered why right-handers have worked so hard to suppress their lefty counterparts, consider this.
Sinister comes from sinestral, and sinestral means left-handed.
Sinister, problem lefty Tim Tebow would take kindly to, but opposing defenses may have used the term to describe the next southpaw on our list.
The number 8 lefty quarterback of all time, Bobby Douglas.
Rarely does an organization find precisely the right man to lead it at precisely the right time.
And for the Bears offense in the early 70s, the right man was actually a lefty named Bobby Douglas.
He was a wild left-hander. No question about it.
What a sensational athlete.
He just had this football mentality.
Entertaining. He was a big physical guy.
He was a football player, but he wasn't a quarterback.
Bobby Douglas was as big as a tackle. The coaches wanted to make him a tight end, but he wanted to be a quarterback.
Bobby Douglas, number 14, is a rarity in pro football, a left-handed quarterback.
I was the first left-handed quarterback that had played in the NFL since a guy named Frankie Albert, I was told, in 1945, and this was 69.
Almost looked like the photo negative had been flipped and you were watching an entire game in a mirror.
He played the quarterback position differently than probably anybody else has ever played.
Well, Bobby Douglas was unique unto himself, and I'm not sure it was because he was left-handed.
Bobby Douglas was a big, kind of square-shouldered lefty quarterback who ran over people.
You didn't see anybody that really wanted to tackle him. He was a heck of a ball carrier.
The reason he had to run? Because he was running for his life.
A porous offensive line kept Douglas on the run. In 1972, he ran for a then-record 968 yards while throwing for just over 1,200.
He averaged 4.5 yards per throw and 6.9 yards per rush. Why was he throwing?
That's a question which dogged our number 8 lefty throughout his career.
This was a guy that ran like Larry Zonka. But as a passer...
I mean, I was around Bobby a lot. He was not a good quarterback.
Bobby, what'd you do in the first play? Nobody took Carl.
Well, I saw Jill. I'm supposed to read Jill.
Bobby Douglas kind of gave a bad name to left-handed quarterbacks because it was perceived that because he was left-handed, he couldn't be a consistently great passer, even though he had a really good arm.
Bobby Douglas could throw the ball 110 miles an hour. But, you know, good luck trying to catch it.
Douglas! Douglas!
Abe Gibron, his coach, at a press conference said, well, you know, he could throw the ball through a barn door if he could hit a barn door.
I will argue his best game occurred when he played with a broken wrist.
He suffered a broken bone in his left wrist. He was out for the rest of the year, but with a memory of the fact that he threw 3 of his 4 touchdown passes after the injury occurred.
It's a feat you'd think would make him a legend in Chicago.
I don't think anybody remembers me now anyway, 30 years, so.
Everybody knows the name Bobby Douglas here, and they still love him.
Oh, we hated him. Because the Bears really didn't get a quarterback from Sid Luckman all the way to Jim McMahon. Hey, I could tell you a lot of right-handed Bear quarterbacks that were inaccurate and sucked too. So I think it's more the position with the Bears, and he took the same amount of heat, whether he's lefty or righty, as any other quarterback that's played for the Bears.
Coming up, what lefty captivated audiences unlike any other quarterback in NFL history?
week in and week out. He's worth the ticket price.
Could have been the #1 left-handed quarterback ever.
You know, the lefty guy with the big hook? There's nothing like that. Just the curl. Our president's a lefty.
Barack Obama is one of 8 lefty presidents, but he's the 5th southpaw of the last 7, all of whom have a deep affection for America's game.
Football has caught the imagination of presidents as symbolizing American vigor.
While lefty Ronald Reagan may have played a football star on screen, only one president was a collegiate All-American, the spuddy-handed Gerald Ford.
In those days, you played both ways. I played offensive center and defensive linebacker.
Politicians have to react fast. They have to be creative in their answers. They have to be creative in their campaigns.
Just like our left-handed presidents, our #7 southpaw passer had a flair for the creative.
The #7 lefty quarterback of all time, Jim Zorn.
Oh, hell. We got to get the rabbit today. That Philly rabbit, Jim Zorn.
Probably one of the more underrated guys, because you don't hear a lot about Jim now, but you don't hear about a lot of us guys.
But for fans of the burgeoning franchise in Seattle, Zorn was the right call as the team's inaugural passer.
For his time and for what we needed as a franchise, Zorn was perfect.
He really was a captivating figure because there wasn't a lot going on in terms of wins.
I don't think anybody really knew what to expect. I certainly didn't.
Jim brought a lot of flair to the game just because he was left-handed. He was a guy that liked to scramble around.
He would drive defenses crazy.
Oh, my goodness. He was kind of like the left-handed Fran Tarkin. This guy was very, very versatile.
I look at Zorn, I see a lot of me in Zorn. He's got a great feel for the game. He's left-handed, he's bigger, he's stronger, and he's probably better.
Zorn runs out on a sprint draw toward his right side. He throws the bomb deep down the right side, large and wide open at the 10. He's got it. Touchdown, Seahawks.
The man on the other end of most of Zorn's passes can also provide the best insights into the mind of our #7 Cuddy Whifter.
Jim is very eclectic, he's very creative, he's very artistic. When kind of the formality of the play broke down, that's when the originality of Jim Zorn really came out.
Waiting for the snap from center. That's a good one. They throw a fake. They give inside to Sherman. Takes off to the 5. He's in the end zone. Touchdown, Seattle.
You know, Jim's a little different.
He'd come to work, you know, in a beat-up flannel shirt, driving a yellow Volkswagen.
Get out of the way.
He'd get out of the car and just walk into the stadium with the fans. He was a real breath of fresh air.
Some will tell you Zorn's creativity and individualism was a result of being a lefty, but it may have come from an other source.
Milk makes me feel so good, I could just sing.
Show your stuff and drink milk. It has lots of calcium, protein and vitamins.
I thought it was pretty good. I thought they should have just perpetuated that, but for some reason we got nixed off the deal.
Milk looks good on you.
Zorn may not hold any passing records or championships, but he most likely accomplished a feat which is rare in NFL circles.
In his entire career, I never heard him say a curse word. That, to me, maybe is the best thing about Jim Zorn, is that he could play this game that's so tough and so deflating and never curse. That, and he's left-handed, there's something special about Jim Zorn.
The #6 lefty quarterback of all time, Michael Vick.
Michael Vick could have been the #1 left-handed quarterback ever.
I would take Michael Vick on the Chicago Bears right now over Jay Cutler.
I would put Michael Vick higher than #6.
Being left-handed for Michael Vick, this was huge.
I'm gonna give him all this, baby. I'm gonna give him all that.
This guy was already magical because of his legs. Now all of a sudden you've got a guy who's left-handed as a quarterback, so this was a great help to him and a great help to his mystique.
That was the magician making magic again. Did you see that smoke coming off of Mike Vick's shoe?
Number 7 starts to tear that jersey off. There's a big S underneath it.
When you play Atlanta twice a year, you had to have the right matchup for Michael Vick and how to handle him and how to defend him.
Michael has looked as impressive as I've seen him in the pocket today.
This is a guy who does more running than throwing, and I think the fact that he's a left-hander is secondary to the fact that he runs.
He's cut it to the middle. He got the first down, and he is down at the 28-yard line. How did he do that?
I'm not sure people entirely know that he's left-handed.
He's a left-hander, isn't he?
Yes, he is. He's a left-hander.
You never knew what you were going to get, but you knew you could possibly get an explosive play. Good or bad, something interesting was going to happen when Michael Vick got the ball in his hands.
Whoa! Lightning in the bottle. That's what he is.
Vick also had a cannon for an arm, and it was not the most accurate cannon at times, even friendly fire with all the Falcon drops. But when he was on, he was on. I don't think anyone in the league could match him in terms of raw arm talent. He just never corralled it.
Vick is on fire. He's thrown for 4 scores. That this guy can throw the ball down the field. I mean, he's trying to answer those questions today.
He can make all the throws. He's got a quick release. He has great touch on the ball and throwing the deep pass. There's no limit as to what he can do, throwing the football. You all right? Yeah, I'm good.
People may think that our number 6 lefty quarterback Michael Vick's favorite play would be a run.
Here comes Michael Vick.
Not so fast.
Snug 71-71. Coach Reeves playbook. So all coverage beater right here.
71-71 is a mirror of 2 receivers on each side with a corner route and a stop route, and he's got a go-to guy, and then he makes a throw to the corner, or he makes a throw to the short guy.
Same read, same combination. If I was a quarterback coach, that's what I would teach my kids to run. 90% of the game.
The number 6 left-handed quarterback spent 2 years away from the game while serving a prison sentence. In 2010, he returned to a starring role in the NFL.
Michael Vick just gliding into the end zone.
Vick established a career high in passing yards, completion percentage, touchdown passes, and touchdown runs, making the most of his second chance.
I know that he can play the position as well as anybody.
How do you thread the needle that tight?
Mike Vick 2.0 was awesome. Just awesome.
The best thing about Michael Vick right now is the fact that he gets it. He understands he has to work hard, which he readily admits he didn't before in the past.
Coming up,
Take it yourself!
what scrambling southpaws beat out Zorn and Vick on our list?
We have to be fast because we had to be fast to learn to survive in a right-handed world.
Picking the right car insurance is easy.
Before we resume our countdown, here's a recap of the list so far.
Number 10, scrappy-handed Scotty.
Scott Mitchell was an average quarterback. I don't care if he's lefty, righty, or throws with his feet.
Number 9, every other southpaw.
I see a lot of college superstars.
Number 8, buck-fisted Bobby Douglas.
He was a wild left-hander.
Number 7, the squiffy Jim Zorn.
He really was a captivating figure.
Number 6, Michael Gibble-fisted Vick.
I don't think they realize the S that's on this guy's chest.
How come we can't just start this list at 5?
And now the number 5 lefty quarterback of all time, Mark Brunell.
Mark Brunell is on this list? Seriously, he's number 5? This is why I should have been a left-handed quarterback.
I mean, he was like an okay quarterback in Jacksonville. He makes this list because he's a left-hander.
Hey, guys. Let's not discount the career he had. He had a very good career.
Solid, steady player. Don't know if you won a championship with him, but you definitely felt good that he was your guy.
To me, he's the ultimate caretaker. He's like the girl who's nice and friendly and makes dinner for you and shows up on time, and because of all that, you just don't find anything about her exciting at all.
All right.
Remember, he was a backup for a number of years in Green Bay.
Well, you're out there real cold. Just think of me. I'll be right by that heater over there, okay? Yeah.
Okay. When he was in Green Bay, it was the perfect
nurturing ground for him to learn his craft, and then when he got to Jacksonville, he could flourish.
Initially, Brunell played his familiar role as a backup to Steve Berline, but it wasn't too long before the Jaguars realized the lefty was the right man for the job.
And this was at a time when the Jags were just in their infancy, so everybody's kind of watching them to see if they were going to be a train wreck.
A 4-win first season was actually deemed positive, but no one could have imagined what would happen in season 2.
The Jaguars started out 3-6, and then magic happened.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, touchdown Jacksonville!
I think the word was momentum. We won a game, won another, and pretty soon we became a very good team.
And the Jaguars are going to the playoffs!
Brunell passed for a league-best 4,300 yards while leading the second-year franchise to within one step of the Super Bowl.
Touchdown Jacksonville!
Riding the arm of our number 5 lefty, the Jaguars would make 4 straight playoff appearances, a record for an expansion team.
Since you're a left-handed quarterback, do you think you have advantages over defensive schemes?
I think for the most part, it doesn't make any difference which hand you throw with.
Brunell may not have thought how he threw gave him an edge, but other traits associated with lefties helped him rise above the crowd in the late 90s.
His mindset was that he would be smarter than any opponent, better prepared.
Very dangerous quarterback, smart guy, mobile, just like, again, most of these left-handed quarterbacks are. Must be the right brain, left arm thing.
Had great athleticism, Steve Young type athleticism.
I heard that quite a bit, and I liked it. I mean, that's, if you're going to be compared to someone, you know, if you're compared to Steve, that's not a bad deal there.
Mark Brunell with a masterful run!
Steve Young never led all quarterbacks in passing and rushing yards in a season, as our number 5 left-hander did in 1996.
That was a hard ball right there.
Good job, buddy. Good to see you.
I am old.
Brunell ranks 3rd amongst lefties in passing yards and 4th in touchdown passes.
Touchdown Jaguars!
But those stats don't compare to what he earned in his 17th NFL season.
I mean, he played for the New Orleans Saints. He was the backup to Drew Brees.
You're great, man. Excited for you. Let's win this thing, huh?
I think Brees took great comfort that Brunell was his backup in that Super Bowl season.
Get ready to party with the Lombardi. The Saints have won the Super Bowl.
For years, we got you up. Took forever.
The number 4 lefty quarterback of all time, Frankie Albert.
I got to admit, when I first saw this list and I saw Frankie Albert, I thought he was part of the 4 Seasons.
Frankie Albert, I don't know anything about him. I mean, I'm literally like, it seemed like the first time. Who did he play for?
I've honestly never heard of the guy, not once in my life. When did he play, in the 50s? Oh, it doesn't even count.
Ignorance from modern-day football fans probably wouldn't bother Albert, who conquered a few shortcomings in making it to the pros.
Frankie Albert, had 2 curses. He was left-handed and he was short, and he overcame them both.
Frankie Albert belongs on the list. He didn't play that long, but he was a really good player.
As far as having a lot of success and being a well-known player, yeah, he was the first among the Southpaw quarterbacks.
Certainly a great old-school name, Stanford University to the 49ers, back when the 49ers took all their players from the local universities.
San Francisco has been the home of great stars as well as great teams. Enough stars to form a galaxy.
He was really kind of the first poster boy for football in San Francisco.
The first time when I was a youngster and I saw a picture of him with the ball in the left hand, I thought, gee, they made a mistake in that photograph. But he was a left-handed quarterback.
With his number 63 jersey, as unique as the arm he threw with, our number 4 lefty passer piloted the 49ers through the 40s as part of the upstart All-America Football Conference.
He had 29 and 27 touchdown passes in back-to-back years. That was major production back then.
The little lefty heaves it for a 49ers touchdown.
The gaudy touchdown totals helped earn Albert co-MVP honors in 1948.
Frankie and Otto were the recipients jointly of the league's Most Valuable Player Award.
The leagues merged in 1950, and the 49ers lefty signal caller came to the NFL with a few tricks up his sleeve.
He was one of the first guys I remember, coming off of faking a handoff on the sweep one way and then keeping the ball coming out the other way. bootleg as it's called.
Albert combines good faking, running ability, and passing as he fools the Browns with a fake bootleg, good for a touchdown.
He was a magician with the football, and his coach at Stanford, Clark Shaughnessy, said his best attributes are those of a faker. So nobody ever knew where the ball was going or who had it when he was in control.
Here's a fake trap play that fooled even our cameraman. Frankie Albert really turned on the razzle-dazzle.
When he got outside the pocket, he was very dangerous.
A lefty who just liked to run around like a crazy man. That was Frankie Albert.
Throwing the football, spreading out the offense, men in motion. They were reinventing the game, and he had a huge part of that.
Up next, what lefty could do it all.
Oh, man, he got me good. Woo!
He's highly intelligent. He's highly athletic. He's very successful. And I don't want to sound very prejudiced in favor of being left-handed, but I think at least 50% of that is because he's left-handed.
Sometimes even right-handed quarterbacks prefer to throw with their left hand.
Play fake, Manning back to throw. He throws one left-handed. He throws it to Jacobs, who makes the catch.
Imagine what these guys could do if they took a lesson from our number 3 left-handed quarterback.
Number 3 lefty quarterback of all time, Boomer Esiason.
Number 3? Who's number 1 and who's number 2? What kind of call is that?
I think we've got him ranked a little too high. The best of anything, and Boomer's number 3.
Boomer in the 80s, yeah. Boomer in the 90s, the Jets thing, not so much.
Not your problem, Boomer.
Boomer is the worst. I don't agree with it, and I can explain my way through it all. Listen, I need your concentration.
Boomer Esiason, the thing that sticks out to me is, the blonde locks and the left hand.
Coming off an era where you have Ken Anderson, who threw the ball hard enough to get it there and soft enough to catch it. And he was tremendously accurate. On comes Boomer.
Let's go, boys!
The strong left-handed quarterback, the ball with a different spin coming out of the left hand, and it took a long time for his receivers to adjust to it.
A lot of people don't talk about left-handed quarterbacks, but he was a great passer.
Esiason to throw. Throws deep. Into the end zone for McGee. Touchdown. Cincinnati.
He had a great gun, and he could throw anywhere on the field.
Which is exactly what our number 3 lefty QB had to do each week, running the complex, up-tempo Bengals offense of the 1980s.
They should have a cheat sheet for you. They should, because this is not a normal offense. Let's go, attack! We basically took our entire playbook and put it out on the field without a huddle. And in order to do that, you got to have smart players. So there is still motion on that. Yeah.
Sam Weiss challenged him intellectually, and Boomer responded to that.
Throws down the right hole, and it's going to be a touchdown.
That's Major League, man. Boomer, to me, was a guy that, because he got wild high at times, as left-handers often do, that would be the only criticism.
I could have thrown a better ball, too. I could have hit him in the stomach with it. Boomer made being a left-handed quarterback a little bit of a glamorous thing.
I know Boomer has every passing record of left-handed quarterbacks in the history of the league.
Sure, our number 3 southpaw put up gaudy career passing numbers, but the 1988 league MVP lost that season's ultimate prize to a legendary righty.
Into the end zone. Touchdown, the Gator.
Boomer Esiason was huge. Not only his physical presence, but his leadership ability. Everybody gravitated to him.
I feel like I'm at a wedding with this guy right in our face all day.
Definitely wasn't an introvert.
Let's take our focus off that Jumbotron and get back on the field.
I liked him because he had an edge to him.
Oh, it's like we gave up on that.
Just didn't give a hoot about what people thought about him. He was going to do his own thing and do it his way.
Boomer proved from a stat standpoint, from an execution standpoint, that it could be done just as effectively. It didn't matter what side you were throwing from.
Thank you.
A convincing enough argument to put Boomer at number 3 on our list, which should be an honor. unless you're an independent, strong-willed lefty who had more than just a big arm.
If you don't think you're number one, then there's got to be something wrong with you. Because you got to remember, all of us quarterbacks, we have like huge egos. We like look at ourselves in the mirror and go, hey, you're a pretty important guy.
Coming up, tales of a lefty who was a legend on and off the field.
When he worked hard, he worked. But when the working was over, he was going to go play and have a good time.
I got a great story about him that I guarantee you nobody else has.
Are you?
Brown runs to the left, throws to the left, touchdown.
That's a perfect throw.
Long before lefty Ronnie Brown was throwing touchdowns for the Dolphins, they had already opened up their playbook to another southpaw running back.
Myers wants to throw a pass. It is caught for a touchdown. In the end zone, Irving Pryor.
But no one was as crafty on or off the field as our number 2 left-handed quarterback.
The number 2 lefty quarterback of all time, the Snake.
Who's won? Stabler number 2, I think, is probably about right.
Brilliant work of art. Yasha Heifetz never played a violin with more dexterity than Kenny Stabler is playing the Minnesota Viking defense.
Stabler pioneered the idea that, hey, left-handed quarterback's just as good.
There weren't any left-handed quarterbacks. I mean, it started with me in high school ball and at Alabama. I'd always hear, good athlete, but he's left-handed. I always lived with that label.
Stabler rolling to the left. He's going to go. Wins it in. Kenny Stabler.
But, it doesn't matter which hand you play with. When you play with the people that I played with, it all works out.
And Stabler was on the money.
I don't think being left-handed is an advantage or a disadvantage. The only thing that looked different was the guys throwing the ball with a different hand, and the ball spins the opposite way.
Receivers can figure out the different spin on the ball. Maybe you have to have your right tackle rather than your left tackle be better in pass protection, but these are things he can do.
Back to Stabler. Pumps once. Goes down the middle of Casper. Wide open. Touchdown Raiders.
I asked Freddie Biletnikoff about that the day that I got to training camp as a rookie. I said, this ball looks different coming at you, right? He said, yeah, but I don't notice that. All I see is a football coming.
6 to go. Deep bomb being thrown to Biletnikoff up the left side. Retreat pass.
Snake is number 2 on this list, but he's number 1 as a partier. Legendary partier.
People always thought he didn't want to work hard. When he worked hard, he worked. But when the working was over, he was going to go play and have a good time.
Where were you last night? He was out late. I was reading the game plan by the light of the jukebox, right? That was one of his lines.
I don't really need an awful lot of sleep, and I would read the game plan by the light of the jukebox sometimes. How much sleep do you need to go play 3 hours?
I picture Ken Stabler kicking open the saloon doors, those wooden swinging doors like in the old West, going in, having a couple of whiskeys, looking at his watch. Oh, I got a game in 3 hours. I better get going.
Late in the game, that cool, everybody felt it in the huddle. He was going to take you down, boom, 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 and make something happen.
Okay, in the huddle today, we got the Snake at quarterback.
To me, Kenny Stabler was the definition of clutch.
He's under the gun. He throws.
There was a little magic about Ken Stabler, that renegade. He was a very popular, mesmerizing figure.
Stabler rolling to the left, throws a quick touchdown for Casper.
Ken Stabler was the first lefty to ever win a Super Bowl.
He was a great quarterback on a team that won a lot of games. He's one of those guys, you just see him out there and flinging the ball left-handed, and he just got it done.
Coming up, you've seen the rest. Now, who's the best?
Being a lefty gave him that slight edge, going back to patterns of behavior.
It's time to score double points.
Before we resume our countdown, here's a recap of the list so far.
Number 10, lefty Scott Mitchell was in the right place at the right time.
This was a guy who really took the fullest advantage of free agency.
Number 9, no one gets left off this list.
Are we naming every left-handed quarterback?
Number 8, Bobby Douglas left defenders in the dust.
Bobby Douglas was a square-shouldered lefty quarterback who ran over people.
Number 7, the quirky Jim Zorn.
Jim brought a lot of flair to the game just because he was left-handed.
Zorn runs to the right. He's got a first down at the 20.
Number 6, Michael Vick's a lefty.
His game is defined so much by his running, I'm not sure people entirely know that he's left-handed.
Number 5, Mark Brunell, the old reliable lefty.
You definitely felt good that he was your guy.
All right. Number 4, Frankie Alberts, the original lefty.
Yeah, he was the first among the Southpaw quarterbacks.
Number 3, the left-handed Boomer Esiason doesn't think we made the right decision.
Number 3? Who's number 1 and who's number 2?
Number 2, Snake Stabler's Southpaw Sideshow.
Snake is number 2 on this list, but he's number 1 as a partier.
And now, the number 1 lefty quarterback of all time, Steve Young.
Steve Young, without a doubt, best left-handed quarterback of all time.
All right, watch the hot and the flat. Double wing right. What's that? Hey, don't touch my ball now.
Steve was such an unusual athlete anyway. He was kind of the Tim Tebow of his generation. People looked at him as a multi-threat runner style of quarterback.
I'm sure the people of Tampa Bay have a much different opinion of Steve Young than the folks out in San Francisco. I mean, when he came to the 49ers, he was considered a bust. Bill Walsh drilled Steve Young into becoming a passer.
Left-handed wise, he's better than a lot of right-handed quarterbacks ever thought about being, much less left-handed quarterbacks, so he's got to be number 1.
Not a baby. Not a baby. Get in out of the huddle, listen close, get your ear into my face, you know what I mean? Let's go.
In 1991, an injury to the right-handed legend Joe Montana gave lefty Steve Young the opportunity he'd been waiting for.
He had so many cards stacked against him. It was almost perfect and poetic that he was left-handed. Symbolically, he was so different from Joe. That's how you write it up in the script.
Gets back up and is landed out of the 16-yard line. Then he lost the ball. Joe Montana would be running in the first place.
This was a controversy that swept through the Bay Area for several years. Joe or Steve, Steve or Joe.
Montana's still the best, and he always will be.
You think about Steve Young and just all the pressure that comes with replacing a legend.
People here, they think that's what Joe Montana would do. Steve Young took this 49er team right down the field.
And then to thrive after all of that. Boy, Steve Young deserves to be in the Hall of Fame and number 1 on this list for dealing with that.
He believed in a scrambling lefty. Thanks, Bill.
Steve Young is a very intelligent guy.
Same name as a category.
Rubber, wedding, and marching band.
Yeah, wow, that's good.
He has probably a much higher IQ than the average guy to go along with great athletic ability, and usually at the quarterback spot, you see one or the other.
For a brain your size, you're not really acting very smart.
Steve Young was the most complete quarterback of all time. It could have been easy for him just to be a runner.
He's got some room. He's going to try to dive for it. He gets there.
And a lot of people assumed that he was running because he couldn't make the right decision, but he ran with a purpose.
Steve Young, one of the courageous games I've ever seen in a pro football player's career. To get the winning score is just the stuff of legend.
Even in a preseason game, I still remember Steve Young without his helmet on, not running out of bounds, but cutting back inside and trying to get extra yards. He was a fantastic competitor.
That's guts.
And he ran effectively, but he threw with a purpose and threw very effectively.
The ball had to be perfect. It was. Niners will win it. The 49ers are going to the Super Bowl, number 29 in Miami.
As good as Steve Young was after Joe Montana left, he was never accepted until he took that team past the Cowboys and won a Super Bowl.
Won't have to hear any more talk about Steve Young getting to the Super Bowl. Now he'll have to win one.
Quick pass to the goal line. Floyd falls in. Touchdown, 49ers. Young, straight back drop. Quick pass, left flat. Ricky Waters makes the catch. He's in.
Steve Young did more than just win the championship. He tossed 6 touchdowns, and the greatest passing performance in Super Bowl history belongs to a lefty.
He was one of those guys that when he won the Super Bowl, you could tell it meant more to him. The tears, the shaking.
And no one can ever take it away from us, ever!
And that's because he's left-handed.
When you walk into Canton, it should say, Here is all the righties, and then one lefty, Steve-O.
Our list is complete, but the debate rages on.
You got two awesome lefties at the top of the list.
Other than Stabler, I don't think anybody could come close to Steve Young.
I'll go with Stabler just because there's a cool factor.
When you think left-handed quarterback, you think Steve Young. That's it.
Until somebody else comes along and outperforms Steve Young as a left-handed quarterback who could also run like a running back and throw the ball downfield as good as anybody, Steve Young's the best.
Yeah, I think Steve Young's the most overrated quarterback to ever be in the NFL.
There's going to be a riot because of this list. I just hope NFL Films is ready for that.